everyone. Today we will cover session number 13 labeled User Authentication Management. Understanding user authentication methods, understanding the Service Center user authentication, and learning how to configure user authentication communities. What is user authentication? When a SafeItOffice user attempts to connect to access a SafeItOffice security appliance, the user is authenticated using one or more authentication methods. The user is then authorized according to its set of permissions, and the types are administrator, read-write or read-only, users manager, the ability to create other users, VPN remote access, means accessing the appliance via VPN connection, web filtering override, hotspot access, remote desktop access, and network access or NAC. User authentication methods. SafeItOffice Local User Database Authentication, configured with 5 to 25 different users in local configuration portal, depending on the SafeItOffice license. These users are authenticated against the gateway's local database. So in a sense, you create the users inside the firewall and use it to authenticate for different options, like we said before, for VPN, for URL filtering, for NAC, and so on. Radius user authentication means that every user request that comes to the SafeItOffice will be sent to an external Radius server and then receive an authentication whether it's allowed or disallowed. Service Center user authentication means that instead of sending it to a Radius server, it would actually send it to the Service Center, to the SMP that sits in the cloud, and will provide different access parameters as set in the SMP. So the Service Center will act as an external centralized user authentication management application. Multiple user authentication method. So it is possible to use any combination of the available user authentication methods. When multiple methods are configured, users are authenticated in the following order. First, the local SafeItOffice user database is searched. If nothing is found, a Radius server, if configured, is searched for. If the user is not located and the Service Center user authentication is configured, then the authentication request is sent to the Service Center and queried on the database. Users as gateway owners. A gateway owner is a type of user associated with one or more gateways in the SMP database. In essence, each SafeItOffice appliance in the SMP has an owner. An owner can have multiple gateways underneath it, but a gateway can only have one owner. It's different from a regular user in the following way. Consider the contact person for associated gateways, and the SMC, which is the console of the SMP, sends the owner all email notifications, security reports, and so on for these gateways. This owner can access the built-in self-provisioning portal and make changes to the associated gateways. Again, the gateways that he owns, he can change and configure from the SMP, from the SPP. Can be granted different administrative permissions when using Service Center-based authentication. So how do we do user authentication through the cloud? It is based on the concept of communities. A group of one or more gateways and one or more users, where each user is granted a specific set of access permissions that are applied to all gateways in the community. User authentication communities allow changes in username, passwords, and permissions to be reflected in the Service Center database immediately, and to affect all gateways in the community instantly. Enable a quick configuration suitable for business growth. Dynamically add gateways and users to a community. So in essence, you don't have to recreate permissions for every gateway you deploy. You can just create a community with a set configuration for permission. For example, the admin user will be the same in that community, and each time you attach a gateway to that community, it will receive that information, and you only have to set the username once. So how does Service Center user authentication work? A user authentication request is triggered by for the following: a VPN client authentication request, a web filtering override request, an administrator access request, and so on and so on. The authentication request is checked against the local SafeItOffice database. If the user is not found, then the SafeIt appliance forwards the request to the Radius server if configured. If the user is not found, and the SafeIt appliance belongs to a user authentication community, the SafeIt Office appliance forwards the request to the SMS. Remember, the SMS is the module that is responsible for communication between the SMC and the gateway, to which it's connected, over the encrypted SWTP connection. The SMS queries the Service Center database to determine whether the user belongs to the same community as the SafeIt Office appliance. Again, if a user belongs to the same community as the SafeIt Office appliances, then you can have it in a user authentication mode, and you can authenticate to each of those gateways. If the user belongs to the same community, then permission is granted. How do you configure it? So you have to create a user authentication community, add a gateway member to the community, create and add users to the community, and assign permissions to community users. Community management is available via main communities node. As you can see here, you create the different types of communities. A user authentication community configuration is available by a main communities general node. For each community, add users under the Community Users tab. And for each user, set its permission. Okay, on the top here we see general permission, which means general permission within that community. And below we see access gateways via my firewall, which means local access to the appliance. So if I want to log into the appliance, I have to check community gateways. If I only want access to my appliance, so it means that I own these appliances, I choose my gateways. This concludes our session. Please take the time to complete lab number 13 in book 3. Please join us for session number 14 titled SPP.